Well, stagflation is inevitable. That's what billionaire investor and Bridgewater hedge fund founder Ray Dalio says. Meanwhile, Nouriel Rabini predicts a U.S. recession by the end of 2022 and long term high inflation. If that is not enough, UBS and the New York Federal Reserve said that the U.S. should brace for a hard landing. Jonathan Pingle, UBS economist, sees a 40% chance of an outright recession over the next 12 months, up from just 2.5% a month ago. The typical signs pointing to an increase in the GDP or any kind of economic recovery are nowhere to be found. After Powell said he would only stop increasing interest rates once he sees, quote, compelling evidence inflation is coming down, UBS thinks a total of 175 basis points is in play this year. The New York Federal Reserve said that the GDP could turn negative and inflation will remain consistently high. It's rocking the whole of Wall Street. The New York Fed sees U.S. GDP falling to negative 0.6% in 2022 and negative 0.5% in 2023. They also calculated that inflation will stay at 3.8% through the end of 2022 and 2.5% in 2023. Dalio's assessment is similar. He said that the Fed and the rest of the government focus on inflation as the only problem. It sees Fed tightening as a low-cost action that will make things better when inflation goes away. This will most likely result in stagflation. Stagflation is a combination of economic stagnation, high inflation, and high unemployment. It last occurred in the 1970s when energy prices increased due to oil embargoes and other macroeconomic pressures. New York University professor and notorious doom and gloom economist Nouriel Roubini, on the other hand, anticipates recession to start by the end of the year. Roubini said, and I quote, if you're looking at consumer confidence, if you look at retail sales, if you look at measures of manufacturer activity, if you look at housing, they're all slowing down very sharply at a time when inflation is still very high. That is stagflation. It's not just a recession. Roubini also said that the market will most likely stay down with the possibility of falling up to 50%. He also said that the Fed and the government has no way of stopping it. So if this is all helpless and it's an inevitable situation, the only thing we can really do is move forward and think of how we can protect our investments. I'm not a financial advisor, but I personally will not be liquidating my investments. I will not liquidate at a loss, but I will have to be prepared for years of crisis. I am increasing my hedge, gold in particular. I will also continue to invest in the market and further diversify if I have money to spare. Please share your tips if you have any. What can we do to prepare for this? Leave your comment below. Even if interest rate hikes help reduce inflation, the policies still hurt consumers by cutting into their spending power. According to Dalio, he says, my main point is that while tightening reduces inflation because it results in people spending less, it doesn't make things better because it takes buying power away. Dalio doesn't see a future in which the Fed achieves a, quote, soft landing for the economy or avoids a recession while reining in inflation. He wrote, quote, there isn't anything that the Fed can do to fight inflation without creating economic weakness. He says, quote, over the long run, the Fed will most likely chart a middle course that will take the form of stagflation. Paul Volcker, the Federal Reserve Chair for 8 years, starting in 1979, is credited with helping to alleviate that period's economic woes by instituting interest rate hikes. Dalio, however, points out that Volcker's tight monetary policy came with a cost. Inflation, he wrote, only went down with increased unemployment. He wrote in a footnote, quote, in other words, inflation was reduced by people and companies being painfully squeezed and reducing spending. And he said, quote, that's always the case and will be the case this time, end quote. Yikes. Hey, I have an idea for the Fed. How about they just stop printing money? That's one thing they can do that would help alleviate inflation. Let me know your thoughts down below. I am Ivory Hecker, partnering with Noble Gold.